All right, hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension. As always, I am Cole, coming at you with my co-host and brother from another mother, Jay, sometimes the Stingray, uh, as we do our second movie directed by Steven Spielberg, which on the surface seems a little odd. You know, he's
Yeah.
like the most famous director, pretty much of the last few decades and stuff, and for the show, we're trying not to do too many of like the big obvious things, but the whole point of Spielberg is he had a long career. He's done a lot of different stuff, and as we touched on with Empire of the Sun, which is a movie I think a lot of people weren't even aware of or had forgotten about and stuff. This one's sort of in that vein, but in a different way. We're doing 2001's AI, Artificial Intelligence, which is definitely much more well known. People know it, people remember it, but it's mostly that it's remembered as maybe a flop or a failure, a disappointment. Certainly doesn't rank up there amongst a lot of Spielberg's well-known hits. And I would probably say it's maybe his most divisive film. It seems to be the one that really divides critics and just people in general in their feelings on it, which was another reason we thought it would be an interesting one to do. It had a fairly long genesis, and one of the other things, of course, that makes it interesting is that it began as a project of Stanley Kubrick that never really got made, and led to somewhat of a collaboration between Spielberg and Kubrick, although Kubrick passed away by the time the film actually started. So it's not exactly a collaboration. It's more like picking up the pieces and such. But as early as the early 70s, Kubrick wanted to do a film. It would be based on a short story by British science fiction author Brian Aldiss. The story in question is Super Toys Last All Summer Long. The early mid-70s, he licensed it, and I think had been in contact with Aldous himself about doing a treatment to make it into a film, and it languished for years, and lots of different things happened. And one of the reasons why Kubrick wasn't as aggressive moving forward with it as other projects also was because he was concerned about the limits of technology at the time. He originally envisioned the idea of the main character, David, the artificial child. He didn't really see that being a human actor. He thought it should be like a CG type character for the demands the story would have. And at the time, in the 70s and 80s, the effects certainly wasn't what was there. In the meantime, some things happened. Aldous himself was going to write a treatment for it, or a script, and I think he actually got fired and replaced by one of his rivals, and a few different things happened there, which isn't too surprising if you're familiar with Kubrick, who's famously difficult to work with when it comes to a lot of things, very demanding type of guy. The mid-90s, he'd been talking to Steven Spielberg about it, I guess because 93's Spielberg hit Jurassic Park had sort of convinced Kubrick that now technology had caught up because of the groundbreaking effects of that movie. He felt like they could move forward and do this story and do a proper justice with that. And again, he was still doing other projects. Spielberg was doing other projects, and I don't really know what the communication between them was for the next few years. But at one point, I think in 1995 or so, I read that it's, all along, Spielberg wasn't even really sure what his involvement was going to be. He just thought of it as Kubrick's film, and Kubrick came out and said to him, "You should direct it, and I'll just produce it," which apparently really took Spielberg by surprise. He wasn't expecting that. He'd always assumed all along that Kubrick would be directing it, and that if he was going to be involved at all, it would be in some other capacity and stuff. So that really took him aback. And of course, going into the later 90s, Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut, and he would die pretty soon after. And I don't think it was till about that time, 99, that anything really concrete began to be put forward for this film.
Yeah, I wasn't really, interested in watching the film at all, originally until I found that out. I think the documentary Stanley Kubrick, A Life in Pictures, is the doc I saw, probably, early mid 2000s. And that's when I went back and, I have a confession to make. I don't think I'd actually seen this film all the way through. I know I had seen the end sequences, but I don't think I'd seen it before now. I was getting it confused with like Bicentennial Man or some shit.
Right.
Something like some other robot type.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd seen it before. So
Yeah, I was going to ask you sort of what your initial impressions are when it came out and stuff, because I remember it coming out in 2001, because you remember most Spielberg movies, they're a pretty big deal,
Yeah.
big event. I was even aware at the time that of the connection to Kubrick, which was sort of interesting. But I didn't see the movie in theaters. It's funny, recently on the Sausage Factory, I revealed 2001 is probably my favorite year in film, just for the quality I think is at the top. And AI was not one of the ones that really registered. There were several big ones that year, another being like A Beautiful Mind and Training Day, a couple others that didn't really mean much to me at the time. And AI is kind of another one. And I probably didn't see AI for another 3 or 4 years. And in the intervening time, I remember I was, without having seen it, I was pretty disdainful of it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the idea of it for a lot of reasons. This kind of story, this kind of sci-fi is something that's near and dear to me. I'm a big fan of these sorts of stories, and we'll make some comparisons as we go on. You know, specifically things like Blade Runner and a lot of anime and manga out there, Ghost in the Shell, things like that. And even as recently as this year, I was just one of the things that really made me interested in a television show, and I'm not usually interested in TV, was the series treatment they gave to Westworld. Explores a lot of these same themes about, you know, artificial intelligence and human-like androids and all that stuff. So it's always been a subject I really liked. And I, at the time, again, this was without having seen it, was kind of disdainful of it. I didn't like Spielberg doing it. I didn't feel like that was his arena. And I was also kind of disdainful of Haley Joel Osment at the time, too, because he was sort of like a golden child who I thought was wrongly praised for how he'd done in The Sixth Sense. And now he was sort of going to be in this big Spielberg movie, and he was like suddenly the biggest child star in the world. And at the time, and you know, over the years, I've softened on him for various reasons and like him okay. But back then, I was just like, you know, I don't care about this little twerp.
I think a lot of people felt the same way too.
Right. So, and then I saw the movie a few years later, maybe 2003 or 2004, and I was just pretty much underwhelmed by it. And I was like, yep. You know, and so one of the things about seeing it again, I thought, well, maybe having all this time passed and different things, you know, different perspective and all that stuff, perhaps I would time and have different thoughts on it. And that was another reason why I thought it could be an interesting thing besides what we said about it being somewhat of a flop. And yeah, I'm pretty confident I can say I can't really think of another one of Spielberg's movies that is more hotly contested, where people really seem to pick a side, whether it's really good or it was just bad, or, you know, it seems to really divide people.
Yeah, I don't think I've really heard many people say that they like this film very much. So, but it's got a good rating on IMDb. It's 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is our source for all.
Yes, that's how you tell anything's good.
If it's not good on Rotten Tomatoes, we're not going to watch it. So.
But yeah, well, I guess it was just that it was another thing I kept hearing the last few years too, that it was one of those movies, as often happens with a lot of movies that flopped or whatever, is that sometimes they get re-examined and vindicated by history, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's not that old of a movie. It's only about 15 years old and stuff. But even, you know, 6 or 7 years ago, I was hearing stuff about people coming around to it and saying, you know, now they liked it more than they had. There's even some instances of actual film critics personally apologizing to Spielberg, saying, I didn't get it when I watched it back then. I get it now, and I think it's very good. Somebody who did stand out at the time was, of course, at the top, Roger Ebert. He gave it a very strong review. He gave it 4 stars and thought it was, you know, a really great success of a film right off the bat. But, yeah, so it was a movie that more or less successful when you're taking the worldwide gross, made over $200 million, like $235 million. But if you look at the North American gross, not good, especially for Spielberg. This is a movie with a $100 million budget. It only came in at $78 million or so in the North American market. And again, when I was talking about like some of these people changing their stance on it or just saying it was misunderstood, those same people will say stuff like the movie was maybe too subtle or poetic or smart for the North American audience. And as we see in a lot, you know, the European and the other markets got it, whereas these didn't. I think that's true sometimes. I don't know if I think it's true this time.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with about this film in particular. I felt like I was being bashed over the head with it. It wasn't subtle at all. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to flop, you know, a Spielberg flop is the way to go, because you're still, you know, not taking into account the marketing or anything, it's still,
Mm-hmm.
made a decent chunk of money
Right.
worldwide. So, flops, I guess, if you're going to talk about this guy's, movies were, just weren't gangbusters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to temper the word a little when you're
Yeah.
dealing with somebody like Spielberg, but yeah, in the context of his career, it's mostly a flop, and it's certainly divisive amongst critics and the movie-going public. Whereas, obviously, any hit movie will have its critics. There's people out there, I'm sure, they're like, "Oh, E.T.'s overrated," etc. and stuff. But it's not.
Sure.
But they're much more a minority. It's much, it's not like this. This I've found is very almost a 50-50 thing where there's a lot of people criticizing and a lot of people praising it and going back and forth on it.
It just
So,
felt like,
yeah.
sorry, real quick, that period of time, it seemed like there was a lot of like really, I don't know, like, robot type movies. I, Robot was a few years later, and I don't know, it just seemed like the market was kind of flooded with this type of thing. And Spielberg again, and Haley Joel Osment was playing the lead role. It had a lot of things working against it, I think, for that period of time. But I really enjoyed it, man. I did. I really liked it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So,
surprisingly
I was just
enough.
going to say, at the turn, I think it's true, though, because it was the turn of the century, right? The millennium.
Right.
So I think there were a lot of studios and thought, the movie-going public was very much ripe for movies that talked about the future and that sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
just because of, 2001 was even a year, like Kubrick himself, that was sort of the future year in his movie 2001. So it did seem to make a certain amount of sense that around 2000, 2001, 1999, turn of the century, turn of the millennium, as we say, it would cause a lot of people to be in that sort of mood, looking forward and being interested in that sort of fiction. So yeah, it probably hit at the right time as far as that's concerned. Even though it didn't ride the wave as successfully as it could, given how it performed at the box office, as we see. But
have you read the short story?
yes, and the short story is basically just the first act of the movie.
Okay.
Pretty much anything after David has left the household is new. But yeah, it's interesting to bring up iRobot, because where a lot of this starts with, it would be a contemporary of that writer, well, a little older, of course, is Isaac Asimov. He's really the guy that started these things. And for people that have those sorts of interests and haven't read it, I very much recommend reading his work, his short stories. iRobot is just one of many short stories that he did dealing with this, and of course, most famously introducing the robot laws that many writers and people in fiction have either just used outright or just built upon in their own fiction. Maybe, I've read other ones where they've expanded upon them, added more intricacies and stuff like that. And another comparison I'm going to be making as we go here, because I can't help it, is Osamu Tezuka himself, who also had made up some robot laws at the time in his Mighty Atom comic, Astro Boy. And there's definitely some parallels there too, which was another thing that kind of made me on the movie in later years, and certainly was in my head watching it this time. Some of the similarities and stuff, but yeah, not to keep people in suspense, I haven't changed too much in how I feel about this movie. I still feel like it's kind of a failure. I still feel like it does not succeed at its attempts to do these themes. I feel like it has a lot of problems. It's still an entertaining movie.
Yeah, I know we'll get there, but I really think the third act is the killer.
That's really what divides a lot of the people. Yeah. And one of the things was, like you said, we'll get there, but another thing that a lot of people understood, including critics, was a lot of people mistook those advanced robots at the end to be aliens. And that really threw everything off, because they're like, hey, then he just throws aliens in. What is those Spielberg and aliens? You see, a few years later, he would do that. Like, even in friggin' Indiana Jones, he threw aliens in, but these weren't aliens. To just clear it up, any confusion for people who are watching, these were not, in fact, aliens. These were super advanced robots that were kind of like the descendants of the last robots. And they were, I guess, what was left on Earth after the human race had died out. And so that changes it a little bit, because I think some people thought it was just kind of, even though it was a sci-fi movie, it was a little out of left field for just aliens to show up. Well, it's not aliens actually. It's like the descendants of the robots. It's just a very advanced group of robots.
Well, it would have been a real easy way to not have that confusion. Is like, don't make them look like gray aliens.
And he can't let go of that fascination. It's like he helped invent them, and he's always had a thing for them. And I get it; it's been all throughout fiction and stuff. But that's true too. Yeah, they just seem so alien-like, based on the aesthetics that they'd introduced themselves. So yeah, but anyway, so I'm sure people know what the story is, but we do it anyway. The setup is 22nd century has been devastated by climate change. Coastal cities have been wiped out or by flooding, and the population of the Earth has been severely reduced by the effects of it. A lot of effects and starvation and things like that. And so we're dealing with a world that has advanced technology and stuff, but you get the idea that the human population has been severely depleted. They don't say exactly how much, but maybe 30-40% less, maybe 50% less. They give you an idea that a lot of like, if you compare it to like maybe a few decades before, it was a huge loss of human life, and the world was not nearly as full as it was. But technology marches on. Robots have become a part of everyday life, and we pick up at a part where androids that seem very human-like have already been achieved. We get this meeting between these. I don't know if they're all from the same company, or if it's people from different companies coming together to share ideas. But we have William Hurt's character, Hobby, and he's like giving a little speech about what they've accomplished and what they want to do moving forward. And amongst the crowd is at least one android, a female who is very advanced. Obviously, looks like a normal human, but he tries to draw the distinction that even though they've come this far, there's still further to go. He makes a little demonstration. Stabs her hand. She's programmed in order to respond to pain, pull her hand away. But then when he asks her how she feels about it, she doesn't have any sort of emotional response to it. And he sort of draws that out. What if we could finally create a robot, a mechanized being that could really have genuine emotions? And they get a little talk about when he says love, people misunderstand. They're like, but we have, this sort of robot, and they mean like sex robots people use for sex, stuff like that. And he says, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like real, genuine love. He asks her to define it. She can't, in any convincing fashion. And then he says, in particular, he was thinking about like the love between parents and children. And at this point, a child robot had never been made because nobody, I guess, saw any commercial application for it. And so he suggests that. And right off the bat, he is challenged with, the moral question of it. If you're creating a robot that really is capable of love and will love its parents, that puts a certain obligation on these parents to love it back and actually treat it well. It's a very big moral, ethical thing. And he doesn't back down from the challenge. He just says, well, isn't that why God created man in the first place, so that man could love him? So before anybody could even say, you're playing God here, he takes that from them and says, yes, I'm going to play God and let's do it, which doesn't seem too out of place. I think, at least as far as this goes, I doubt you or I will live to see the day where robots or artificial intelligence even approaches this. But it seems like we are very much on a path to that, and sooner or later it's going to get to something like this. It seems like an inevitable thing, unless there's a nuclear war or something in the meantime. But yeah, we've had stories going back as far as Frankenstein about like playing God, but I don't know if any of that's really going to matter in the end. If people can do it, they probably are going to do it.
Yeah, you get the same argument with cloning and stuff like that. And you can realize how that can get grossly out of control. But I don't know.
They jump ahead to show that they've made this prototype to be the first. And the whole idea is the company, Cybertronics or something like that, is going to do like a field test, before mass marketing these things and introducing it to the public. They're going to take a couple of their employees and use it that way and sort of monitor the situation. But this is already where I come into problems with the writing, because the couple chosen doesn't make any sense to me from that standpoint. It's hugely problematic to pick the couple they've chosen. Like, why would you do that? Because they don't just pick a child. Because he talks about the idea, well, there's many childless couples out there. You can't have children live it. And then they don't do that. They select a couple that has a child. The problem being the child, a young boy, similar to David, has been in like suspended animation for a while. He has some sort of rare disease, and they've just kept him in that until they can find a cure. So they can visit him, but he's in stasis and he's very removed from their life. So that's already very different thing than a completely childless couple having this. And it just seems like a big stupid mistake for them to make right off the bat, this company, that this is how they're going to test their prototype. Because it just raises all sorts of issues. So we were introduced to the parents, Monica and Henry, visiting the child in the hospital. There's lots of like allusions to Disney and stuff in this right off the bat. You know, she's playing the song Once Upon a Dream. I don't know how many people know that very well, but I know the movie very well. That's Sleeping Beauty. I own the movie, so I guess there's a certain symmetry there. He's in stasis, kind of like Sleeping Beauty, so she's playing Once Upon a Dream. And of course, since this whole thing comes from Pinocchio, and it was very important to Kubrick, you know, he even just called the project Pinocchio. They don't try to hide it, so there's Pinocchio imagery and illusions all over the place. It's not even it's directly in there. It's not like here's a little homage. They just talk about it out front, which is fine, I suppose. But before we get to that, yeah, so we've got the little Sleeping Beauty thing, and then I don't know, it's odd. So Henry agrees to take the boy home, and then just sort of inflicts him on the mother without telling her. He tells Monica, okay, look, I've got a surprise for you, and boom, David is in the house, and she sort of reacts the way I think a lot of people would react, where, what are you doing? You know, we have a son. This is crazy. And so then we get like about 20 minutes of sort of like the awkwardness of him being introduced into the household and them coming around to him, and he is very strange. And they say, you know, there's a reason for that, because at first he's in sort of like a weird mode where he's not completely developed, because he needs to go through a certain procedure called imprinting with one of the parents. No, it's one, not both. One of the parents makes this decision to take him and say a certain amount of command words, and then that imprints, and then he flips over into a more dependent mode where the love supposedly kicks in, where he loves this parent. So we do eventually get to that point where she starts to feel something for him and wants to do that.
Until her real son comes back and
yeah. I mean, even if this is supposed to be completely like unexpected for the company, even if the company couldn't possibly predict, you know, that the kid could come back, it's still an odd situation, because even if the kid doesn't come back, he's still there. They have a kid. It's still a weird situation to test their prototype on this couple that's already going through this strange emotional thing, where, well, we have a son, but he can't be with us. Maybe he'll never get better. Well, now we have a son, a robot son, and, you know, they play it up for all it's worth with how awkward it is at first. He's just sort of following around the house and smiling at her, and she just doesn't know how to react to it. At one point, she locks him in a closet, which for a normal child is like a horrible act of child abuse, but not with him. He doesn't mean anything to him. She does open the closet pretty quickly, and he just smiles at her and says, "Is it a game?" She's like, "Oh yeah, it's hide and seek."
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just a really weird situation. Her real son is a total piece of shit, by the way.
And that's the other problem.
Awful kid.
I mean, they bring this kid back, and you understand a little bit of it, but like you said, it goes too far with this kid. You understand a little bit of it. It's like his parents replaced him with like a toy, so you can understand. Even if he was flesh and blood, like if they had another kid, he would feel a certain amount of resentment towards it. And the other thing they're trying to really get across to us is that since David is unique and the first of his kind, it's a world where people have become pretty used to these robots, but they're also desensitized to them. They know what they are. They're appliances, they're things, so they don't have emotional attachments to them. So as far as this kid coming back, Martin, I think his name is, he's sort of been replaced by like a cute looking toaster. And again, there's no scene of the parents taking him aside and telling him about David or giving him any sort of instructions about David. It's just like, oh, wow, you're back. We'll just throw you two into the mix together and see what happens, which again seems really stupid. And even at that point, it also seems to me that it's entirely possible to return David. If isn't that the worst case scenario then if it's not working out? Return him?
Well, she keeps saying she knows what'll happen if she returns him, which I don't really know what that means. I'm assuming they'll wipe out his hard drive and he'll start over.
Yeah, which doesn't sound that bad to me. It's not like they're melting him down for scrap.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're already playing God and all these sorts of things, you know, wiping his memory, yeah, it's playing God. But at least if you are concerned about its simulated feelings, it is the kind thing to do. Because what she eventually does isn't monstrous. It's not in any way kind, as we'll get to. But anyway, so as you said, so we have these scenes with him trying to just be sort of a son and a brother to this kid, and this kid at no point feels any emotional attachment to him, and right off the bat is already testing him and seeing what he can make him do and do things to him. And maybe the cruelest thing of all, and the mother is very stupid, is that he walks up and introduces the story of Pinocchio himself. I mean, that's some real emotional, psychological warfare going on from this kid. Who would have thought this kid that's been in a coma for so long was capable of such malice?
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to like show him pushing David and going, "You're not real," but this is much more devastating and underhanded. And he hands her, you know, says, "Read to us." David's gonna love it. Like, is the mother that stupid? And so she indulges him with, "Yes, I'll read Pinocchio to you together so that David can realize the parallels between himself and Pinocchio, and we can reinforce how not real he is." You know, and of course the twist being David actually is enchanted by the story because it does offer hope. Because in the story and also in the Disney movie itself, the Blue Fairy does eventually complete the transformation. Pinocchio becomes a real boy, so that's what he clings to. He doesn't. He filters out the other stuff and clings. You know, he still sees the story as a good one because it presents to him a real hope. Something there's something out there that could make him real. He could be a real boy, even though
he's convinced that his mother will love him when he becomes a real boy, and that's just the saddest part about the whole thing is. You know, I mean, why do you have to be real for her to love you? But,
yeah. Well, again, some of that's probably reinforced in Pinocchio, makes him start to think that way because he probably doesn't think that way initially. It's really once it's the contrast, right? The real son shows up. He's like, oh, they love me, but they love him more because he's real. And yeah, so we get some scenes like that. Eventually,
we got to talk about the spinach eat-off.
Right. So I guess that's another sort of demonstration to show how he's real and he's not. They're sitting at the table. It's David's custom to sit with them at meals, but he can't eat. He doesn't eat. He just sort of sits there while they eat. And Martin, I guess, in another little ploy to show his superiority and stuff, starts really making a spectacle of himself eating. I guess just to show that he can and David can't. And David, something in him sort of snaps a little. He wants to rise to the challenge. So he starts eating too, even though we're known because the wise toy teddy bear says, "You will break," just letting us know that this won't be good for him. And, you know, and they go until he has kind of a breakdown caused by it because he can't have spinach gumming up his works.
Yeah, this is a horror movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychological and emotional abuse going on in this movie. You know, we see this robot child, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're supposed to feel sorry for him and identify with him. I assume that's the point of the story, is that we're supposed to feel like, even though he's not real, it's real enough. What he feels might be simulated emotions, but aren't simulated emotions still emotions? You know, that kind of stuff. And we get to see what he goes through because of this, just because he happens to be a prototype and he gets inflicted on, again, this family that's not suited at all to take him in. Like, it just seems like a stupid choice by this company to select them. This was the best situation they could put him into. So that happens, and then we get the thing about the lock of hair, where David once again is very easily manipulated by Martin. Martin convinces him, you know, we heard a story about something like what a princess taking a lock of the prince's hair or something, and she loved him, and you can do the same thing for Mother. She'll love you more if you can do that. It just shows how malleable and naive David really is, and it makes a certain amount of sense. He's programmed to have a certain amount of innocence, otherwise he won't be convincing as a child. And all the robots also, as we see, they're not really supposed to resist against any way they're treated. They're just supposed to go along with how they're treated. They can run away, as we see, they can run away from harm, but they can't necessarily do anything about it. Although they do twice make a point that David is unique when it comes to that, because David can beg for his life. He does it twice. He does it at the pool, where he becomes scared of being cut and hides and runs behind his brother for protection. And then later on at the flesh fair thing, where he basically begs for his life so they don't kill him. So that separates him from all
Regular,
the other mechas. They call them. Yeah, they call them mechas, which is fine. I mean, all these stories have to have like some slang term, some official term for this, and mecha, that works for me. It's just a little weirder when they flip it around. There's like mechas and orga for organic. Okay, orga, that's going a bit far, Oh, I'm an orga.
Orga, mecha.
Yeah.
Orga,
Yeah.
mecha.
So of course he's manipulated easily to go get the hair. He's like, why can't I ask her? It's like, no, you can't. Doesn't give him any real reason why he can't, but no, it has to be like a secret. So no, here's what you should do: sneak into mommy and daddy's bedroom at night when they're sleeping with scissors and cut the lock of hair. And
Sure, a great idea.
Great idea. And it goes as badly as it might. It wouldn't work if he actually did it without them waking up. He wakes them up, and they're pretty terrified of the image of this robot child standing there with scissors. The father's really upset and grabs him and shakes him, and I guess he can't really. And it seems to me again that he can't lie or anything. He would just tell the truth. Wouldn't they see that this is Martin's handiwork once again? Martin, I get that like they're happy Martin's back and he's their real child, but they don't impose any rules on him. They never discipline him. They never say anything about how he should treat his brother. Nothing. Just nothing. So again, I just have a lot of trouble with the writing. It seems like they're trying to achieve a certain result, so they'll make all sorts of things that seem like logistical errors or make the character seem stupid just so they can move it ahead, which is one reason I don't like it. I find it insulting that they would do it that way. And so then we have a birthday party, another big difference between him and Martin. Martin has a birthday party. He doesn't have a birthday party. He wasn't born. Lots of boys there, and they're all very interested to see this new kind of mecha because he seems so real. They're touching him, and he feels real, which they find weird, even though it's already been established at the start of the movie that there's already mecha that look and feel real, but okay. But I guess they're probably more expensive, maybe. One kid, when he's talking about the DOS, the damage avoidance system, he says they have like a gardener or something like that. You get the feeling it's probably more primitive. It doesn't necessarily have to be that lifelike if it's just going to be like a gardener or a butler or whatever it is. And he wants to show them the DOS system. So he just wants to see how he'll respond to the data of pain. He's just going to make a cut into his skin with the garden trowel or whatever it is. And David, as per his programming, is afraid. He reacts with fear and goes to Martin, to protect him, accidentally pulls Martin into the pool, but another problem, he has like an iron grip and he doesn't let go. Nearly drowns the kid. Yeah. And they really show, again, the divide there. Everybody panics, they jump into the pool, they do prime loose, they get the kid up. They leave him at the bottom of the pool. He can't drown, so just leave him there. So he gets to sit at the bottom of the pool, watch his family and everybody freak out over the real kid. One more example of who's real, who isn't, who matters, who doesn't, who loves who.
Right. And to even further the difference between the real boy and the robot boy. Let's just leave him at the bottom of the pool. But I really liked that the shot when David was at the bottom of the pool, and then the whatever the other son, the real asshole son, he was they were doing CPR, I assume, and his feet were still in the water, and you could see his feet start to kick when he actually regains consciousness.
There's some really good shots.
Really cool. Yeah.
There's some really good shots in the movie. I think this movie has great lighting. They do really good job of lighting in this movie, the different areas. I like the sunlight that comes into his little bedroom area. they do it again at the end of the movie. I love the lighting that they have in the weird Rouge City and stuff. They do really great stuff with lighting. So, I mean, I do have some positive things to say about the movie for sure. As you said, there's some very cool artistic shots, and that's definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, picking up after that, I guess that's since he almost killed his brother.
Yeah.
They decide. Again, we don't get a scene of her even talking to Henry about this. Nothing. Just boom. She's there with her, and she's already planning to get rid of him. She's telling him about how she's going to take him out for a drive in the country, just the two of them. And I mean, you're watching for the first time, you're thinking, "Oh no, she's not really like she's gonna take him out and leave him." And it turns out to be even worse than what you're thinking. They drive out to the country, the forest, and she doesn't even try to trick him or anything. She doesn't go, "Oh, look over there," and drive off. No, she takes him into the woods and then explains to him painstakingly, without giving any real reasons, that she has to leave him. It's so weird, and she just comes across as this monster. It's just "Oh, I can't deal with you anymore, and I could take you back into the company, and maybe they could reassign you or fix you, but no, this is better. You and Petty just fend for yourselves in the wilderness."
Real quick, why is that his reaction when they try to stab his arm and try out the DOS system? Why does he grab a hold of the other boy?
I can only assume, again, it's sort of like what they illustrated at the beginning, where he stabs the girl in the classroom during the demonstration. Is that she knows enough to pull her hand away, but there's no emotional response. So the idea is they need to make it more realistic. He needs to have a genuine emotional response to being physically hurt. And since he's a child, all this fear, I think it's sort of like them kind of overdoing it in that sense. Like they wanted him to be like a real child. It probably went a little too far, in that it made him, I mean, any child will be afraid, but again, he goes over a bit. He walks around the kid and isn't even thinking about how he could drown him or anything. It's just the fear, whatever the emotional response that kicks in, it overrides everything else, which is realistic, but also somewhat problematic. So I guess it's probably they're demonstrating that again, how he's different. He has the damage avoidance system, but he has to have, but to make him unique, to make him what he is, he has to have the emotional response that goes along with it, and his is kind of a little over the top.
Yeah. Well, he does it quite a bit. He does it a few times with Jude Law as well. Later on, whenever there's anything like the lights flicker and he gets scared and grabs his hand. So it is. I don't know. It's a bit much.
It points out how problematic it is, right?
Yeah.
Trying to program something to simulate like a real child, because there's no real master rule for children. All children are different. Most kids do get afraid of things, but there's still levels of how different they are.
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid, I was kind of afraid of the dark, but I wasn't really afraid of the dark. Where there were some kids so afraid of the dark that if you turn their lights off, they'd be kicking and screaming and freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
So it just shows how complicated it is trying to assign these sorts of things to this robot child when there's not really any standard exactly. It's just a bunch of it's just sort of a bunch of general knowledge that they're just sort of picking and choosing from, and it shows how it can be really problematic and make kind of a mess out of the kid. So again, I really hate her conversation with him, because there's no, at this point, I'm pretty sure most of the audience is upset about it and doesn't think she's doing the right thing. I think most audiences are like, "Oh, this is a terrible thing to do." But you still expect her to have her, trying to justify it. She doesn't even really seem to do that. Anything to him. She's just like, "Oh, you gotta go." I have to leave you.
Well, I think she makes it a point to tell him that, because she knows he's just going to walk back to the house.
I guess. I mean, she took him pretty far, I guess, so hoping that he wouldn't be able to find his way back.
It's like the equivalent of just dropping a dog off in the woods and, all right, have a good one.
I mean, she tries to give him advice about, staying away from people, because she's aware of as we find out later in the movie, there's a whole subculture of people that are very resentful and violent towards robots, which, again, I can buy. I've seen that in other fiction. It seems like something that would probably really happen if that happened. You know, there'd be a whole section of people that would resent this and take joy in their destruction. I don't have a problem with that, but she just tells him, just stick with your own kind, Mecha. But he's completely alone. Like, why couldn't you at least take him to a place where there were some of the Mecha? Anything except what you did. It seemed like there were just all these other alternatives, and she just went with like the laziest, stupidest one that she can't even really come up with a way to justify. You and Teddy stay in the woods and watch out for people.
Yeah, and don't come back.
Don't come back,
no matter what.
Yeah, I do like the Teddy, because he sort of shows the leap, and they even use the word super toy. They say about how he was a super toy. The idea of him being outdated now compared to what they're making these days and stuff. But I do like the Teddy. He's kind of a good little companion to have along for something so primitive and outdated. It has a lot of sort of insight and common sense, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. I don't get that either at all. But he's the voice of reason most of the time, or the explanation, the exposition. He kind of furthers the story along quite a few times.
Yeah, very weird when you first think it's just a little side thing, but how important it is as far as like moving the story along. Well, yeah, there's that, slightly before, I think it's before the pool incident, or maybe it might be between the pool incident and her last straw of getting rid of the kid. Is, remember, she finds like these like notes that he wrote for her saying like, "I love you, mommy," and stuff, and they get sort of more hostile towards the Teddy at the end, which I get. It's Martin's influence. It's Martin, trying to make people love people and not the things, and he's trying to distance himself from Teddy and make him, like, I'm real, Teddy's not, so love me and Martin, we're real, don't love Teddy and stuff. It's heartbreaking and fascinating. It's kind of cool. I do like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be like where she realizes that he's got this obsession with being real so he can get real love, and then she makes her ridiculous decision. I have a lot of trouble feeling any sympathy for her character, even though she's already supposed to be a sympathetic character given what she's been through with her own son. But it just seems like, oh, well, good job. You've been given this tremendous honor and responsibility. I know you didn't ask for it, but you did choose to take it on. You did the imprint, and then you let your kid run roughshod over this thing.
Well, I totally understand the decision to wanting to get rid of him. The way she did it, not at all. But, in their eyes, they just saw him standing there with a pair of scissors. They didn't know what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
If he had explained himself, I'm cutting your hair for whatever reason, maybe that, because it's 2 times, that they were, he could have killed them.
I have to assume he did it. He did explain himself, though, because he's built that way. If you ask him, he just tells you. He doesn't conceal things, and he doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that he would easily just tell them the truth, and they would, unless they were really stupid, realize that Martin had put him up to it. And that's the other thing. Like, how dumb are they about their own kid? I know they haven't had him for a while, but geez.
Well, Martin put him up to pretty much everything. I mean, he's the reason there was any problems at all.
Mm-hmm. Because, before you get to that point, of course, okay, when the kid comes back, okay, this is going to kickstart some problems. Right. But it's amped up so much because it's not just like the normal stuff. Martin's practically a supervillain by the time all is said and done. The way he's like planning and calculating, just insightfully inflicting very subtle, psychological cues and stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff, the Pinocchio thing of being a masterstroke. But it's just awful. But anyway, so. Now we're out of that, and we don't have to see them anymore. He's in the wilderness, and things start to really change from there. And we get to see some of the outside world finally, because we hadn't really seen it. And as you might expect, it's kind of cruel and scary place. He does meet up with other mecha. These being like runaway, broken down ones that are looking for spare parts to help themselves and stuff. And he just falls in with them because they're there and stuff, and it's not even long before they're being hunted by the group that does the flesh fairs. I don't understand why they use a balloon that has a very realistic-looking moon. I didn't get that, if that's some sort of symbolism. It's a very good effect, the moon, but I don't understand it.
It looked cool, but yeah, I don't understand it either. Cool.
Brendan Gleeson, who I've been seeing a lot of these days, is like the leader of them.
Yeah, I was wondering if you mentioned that.
And they're rounding them all up. And again, here's for the most part, I think the movie has a pretty good visual style, but sometimes it goes outside, and again, like they send out like their hunter guys on these motorcycles, and they're all lit up in neon to make you think of Tron, which seems really stupid to me. I'm like,
it's a bit much, I think.
It seemed a bit much, like because
and the motorcycles. They have wolf heads on the front of the motorcycles, and they move their jowls for some reason. I don't know exactly.
It just seems like this huge disconnect from like at first it's showing us, okay, it's the 22nd century, the world has changed, technology marches on, but it's still, they don't go over the top with it at first. It's like it's still kind of contemporary, the way the house looks, the clothes and stuff. And now suddenly it's like, oh, okay, now you're in like a post-apocalyptic wasteland where this, it seems like a huge departure, which is jarring to me. I mean, it's supposed to be somewhat jarring. He's left it, he's gone from his suburban home to life out in the wilderness. But I didn't like that touch at all. I thought it was over the top and didn't fit in with the movie. Yeah, these Tron racer guys. No.
Well,
but,
we
capsule, of course.
We got to meet the Jude Law's the blowjob robot.
Right, Gigolo Joe. Yeah, so yeah, before that we get a little departure. We finally, after 50-some minutes just there, we finally jump perspective. We go to Rouge City, which is kind of like a Las Vegas type deal, a red light district full of funding games and sex and stuff. And see, this is where it gets again problematic when I'm trying to understand the world. It makes sense, certainly, as I said, that these companies that are making these robots, they all have a purpose and stuff, and certainly a sex robot like him would be very profitable. But nobody owns him. So who's making his money? He's just going around. He has his own life. It's he's programmed to be a gigolo or whatever, sleep with women, and he does it, and he's good at it. But how is this helping the company that made him? Like, do they have like a debit system? Do they swipe a card on him, and that's how they get money? That's never explained. So it just seems like he's just a free agent, living his life, doing what he wants. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like somebody bought him and took him home. Mm-hmm. So I find that a little odd. And
well, he's a prostitute.
Yeah, he's a prostitute. But we don't see any scene with a pimp or anything. Like, right. Where we understand why if he was built for this purpose, who is profiting from it? It's not. He wasn't just built to make lonely women happy.
That's a good point.
There's no company out there that says, free prostitute bots for those lonely women. We don't need to make any money off this. There's lonely women, and they need to get some too, and they need a dream boat like Jude Law. And of course, Jude Law is a good choice. This is just a couple years before he explodes and becomes a huge star. He was starred in like 4 or 5 movies in 2004. He's in like everything in that year.
Yeah.
He's just sort of on the cusp of that. And I mean, he plays the role well, but I don't find his character adds much to the story. To me.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I have more questions than answers with him.
And that's my big question. Like, it makes perfect sense to me that in this world there are sex bots, but the way he's presented, I don't understand who's profiting or anything like that. And it just shows how easily it can be manipulated. He goes to see a regular client who's been murdered by her jealous husband, and it's very easy to set him up as a patsy, and he has to work for him. And it's weird because they make a point of saying that he's got like this badge thing on him that shows that he's registered, so that the people that round up these robots for the flesh fairs know that like he's somebody's property, I guess the company, although again, it's not well established or explained, but they say that he's got it and that keeps him safe after he's like framed for the murder, which isn't really framed. He just comes into the room, but that's enough, I guess. He's like, oh, I'm in bad trouble now. At least he grasps that. And then he goes out and he starts to like remove his chip, although maybe that's so the company that made him can't track him. Again, they don't explain these things, and you're just sort of left speculating, like I'm doing. Like I feel like maybe something was cut out or something, because the whole life of Gigolo Joe confuses me. I get that he lives as a prostitute, but I don't really know who made him or why or how the system works or anything. And apparently, it's super easy to murder somebody and frame these guys. Just have them walk into the room, and that's enough.
Maybe he works for the the hotel or the motel, the brothel. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's like a house sex robot. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, and they didn't. They didn't tell us.
It's pretty clear that he never leaves Rouge City. Like that's his place. He just stays within it. But anyway, because of this, he's forced to leave. And he goes on the run, and he winds up amongst the group of robots that gets captured along with David, and they get taken to the Flesh Fair, which is just a disgusting name. I mean, and it doesn't really explain what they're doing. They're rounding up robots and destroying them in entertaining ways, and it's called the Flesh Fair. Now, I'll admit, some of this just becomes from flesh is a word I hate. I hate the word flesh. It sounds disgusting. It just makes me think of cannibals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'm really influenced by that sort of stuff. Like, you know, you can have nice erotic fiction where two people are going to do it, but if you start saying, like, you know, he rubbed his hand along her flesh, boom, takes me right out of it. No, flesh, no. Flesh does not work for me. It just makes me think of, like, yeah, being consumed. It just makes me think of cannibals or, like, flesh. I don't think of, oh, you have such nice flesh. That just sounds creepy and awful to me.
Oh, that flesh.
But even if you take that away, why is it called a Flesh Fair? It's an ironic name? Is that what it means? We celebrate the fact that we're flesh and they're not? I mean, I don't get it. Like, it just seems like another thing that sounded catchy to them, and then no thought was actually put into it. Like, well, this doesn't really make any sense. So, yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever played the game Borderlands?
No, but I've seen, like, footage of it and stuff.
It really reminds me a lot of this Flesh Fair business. Oh man, I've got so many questions about that, about what's going on there. so it's they're just destroying these robots for pleasure. Yeah, they're
just entertainment. And again, I get that there would certainly be an audience for that. I get it. Yeah. So they build up like these little stadiums. I don't think they're permanent. I think they just move them around stadiums, and then they throw a show. It's kind of like. I don't know, kind of like a
monster truck rally.
Yeah, I was gonna say demolition derby type thing.
Yeah.
But the idea is, you know, kill them in entertaining ways, and it's which I don't take any issue with that. I think it probably would be a thing that, like I said, there's probably definitely a bunch of society that resent these robots and would enjoy seeing them, and people do like violence. Obviously, people always like violence, and they really amp it up, of course. You know, they're in this big stadium with like lights flashing and fireworks going off and stuff, and they're like cutting them with chainsaws, and there's a band that sounds like fucking Kid Rock playing.
Yes. Oh man, that band. What was going on with them? That's probably a real band too, isn't it?
They sounded like Kid Rock to me.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing. Like that kind of like rap rock.
Yeah,
type.
it was. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And all these rednecks in the crowd going, yeah. I mean, sure.
I don't get it, man.
So David's in the cage with all these things that none of them really look that human. And, of course, he looks like an ordinary little boy. Nobody notices it until a little girl comes along, a little girl with huge eyes, and she thinks she goes and tells her dad, who's one of the guys that runs the thing, you know, there's a little boy in there, and they see him, and they're mesmerized and never seen anything like it. And it's interesting because he's like, you know, this is a really special advanced robot. We shouldn't kill it. Brendan Gleeson's character who runs the show is adamant that it's really important they kill it because this is an even worse affront because he's even more realistic because it's like now they're really trying to replace people. And of course it backfires. We see even this crowd isn't that bloodthirsty. You know, they can't see a little child, something that looks like a real child. He gives a big speech trying to explain, you know, here's like they've done now. They're trying to replace children. Don't be fooled. You know, this is an abomination and stuff, but they can't help it. Even this crowd can't watch like him get like torn apart, and they turn on the promoter and stuff. And
these people are fucking maniacs, man. They're like applauding at the destruction of these things, and all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, no, that one looks like a real person though. Yeah. I don't buy that at all.
I do to a certain extent, I guess, because like I said, he's the first of his kind. No one's ever seen a child robot before. He is very lifelike. And again, it's the second time he starts begging for his life. Like, none of the robots beg for their lives. They don't have that in them. They don't want to get killed, but then they go out and they just get killed because that's what they are. He's there saying, I'm David, don't hurt me. So I get it that at least, I wouldn't say all of them, but at least makes sense to me that some of them be like, oh, no, this isn't right. Anyway.
Yeah, the Chris Rock robot doesn't beg for his life at all.
Yeah. No, he does in a way. I guess he does in a way, right? He does in a joking way. It's like here's your black comedian robot. We've replaced black comedians in the future. Now we have these. Chris Rock bot. Yeah, great cameo.
By the way, that band was Ministry.
Wow. That's older than I thought.
That's awesome, dude. That's so appropriate for Ministry to be playing like that, too.
Very much so. I wouldn't have thought somebody that old, but it makes sense, yeah. But yeah, so they shoot Chris Rock into a fan. They shoot him out of a cannon into a fan, and everybody loves that. But so anyway, after the crowd turns on them and they start to riot, that gives David the chance to escape, and for pretty much no reason, he's just attached to Jude Law's Joe. He and Joe run out hand in hand. Although I don't really know why. They don't have any real connection or anything like that. They just happen to say a few words to each other, and now they're going. And I mean, I get like I said, Joe's kind of a disappointing character to me because there's sort of potential there, and they do use some of it. It's kind of funny because he's the adult and he's the kid, but he only knows about the world in a limited way, and it's all through the lens of sex, which is kind of funny. Like everything he's like telling him is basically relates to sex. Like he's saying, "I'm looking for the blue fairy." It's like, well, blue fairy is a woman. I know women, and stuff like that. And he does his little dance, dancing in the rain dance there, or singing in the rain, which I think is probably a little shout out to Kubrick's work, Clockwork Orange.
Oh, yeah, possibly.
Because Alex does that dance at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a little shout out to that. But after they talk a bit, and again, between the two of them, they don't know anything, and the Teddy is the most reasonable one of the three.
Mm-hmm.
The Teddy that got separated from them, but found them again. They should have just made the movie from his perspective.
Yeah, or made a movie about him.
Yeah. Anyway, so he decides, well, the best thing to find this blue fairy woman is back where I came from. Suddenly he doesn't care about the fact he's wanted for murder there. He'll go back to the only place that makes sense to him, Rouge City, because, he can find women, and they go there, and it's okay. I mean, the look of it's okay. They didn't go full Blade Runner, which is nice, because in so many movies since Blade Runner, all they pretty much tried to do was just do it again. It's just like, here's Blade. This is the one view of the future, and we're just going to stick with that. Like every movie, I get it. I mean, it's great. That's your influence, but they make it a little different. Like it's a red light district and stuff, but it's not totally scummy. It still seems kind of like a cool place. Like it's not like a horrible, rundown, awful place. They show some of the glitz and you understand why people will go there. It's not just like some hole. But and he says like an odd line about religion, which is kind of funny because like he's like, is that the blue fairy? It's like pictures like that's Her Lady of Infinite Compassion or something like that. And he's just like, and he says, well, the ones that made us want to know about who made them. So they go in there and they fold their hands and they talk and they come out and they usually come to me, which I thought was actually kind of funny what he says.
Yeah.
But so to find answers, there's like this special program thing called Dr. No that they go to ask, which this is where it gets a little problematic again with the future, because all he is a database, basically. He's just like a talking database. And you would think in the 22nd century, that's not really that unique or the type of thing people would necessarily go to pay money for. Now, I understand why David himself doesn't have access to a bunch of like Wikipedia articles, because he was made specifically not to. But I think most of these robots and stuff would. Mm-hmm. Blue fairy, okay, searching, they come up with a bunch of articles in their head. So this just seems like a little bit of a misstep. And this is already 2001. It's not like this was 1960s or something. So this seems like a bit of a misstep where they're kind of predicting a future where, I don't know, there's some sort of internet problem.
Where the internet does not exist.
Yeah. It's like, so people still have to like go talk to your Dr. No, because it's really not like it's not like going to see a gypsy or something. It's very much even though it's got a bit of a show to it, it's still very much supposed to be real facts and stuff like that. And this is a Robin Williams cameo, uncredited, but anybody who knows Robin Williams would know there's Robin Williams. Yeah. It's a cool little bit, and yeah, they have to insert money, and he answers the questions and stuff like that. And at first the answers aren't getting them anywhere. Where is the blue fairy? Can she make me real? They have to switch categories a few times until eventually he starts quoting from the book Pinocchio, and then he asks the question like, how can she make me a real boy, which leads to a book written by David's actual creator, Hobby, and that is what makes them decide they have to go to him. Mm-hmm. But they say that it's in Manhattan, which is one of the cities that has been destroyed. It's been flooded, so nobody should live there. But they do, and they find them pretty easily. Again, this is where I feel like the writing is starting to fall apart again. So they go outside. The cops arrive to arrest him. David just nonchalantly steals the police copter thing, and they make a very easy getaway. And they fly into Manhattan. The effects are really good in a flooded Manhattan. You see like this wrecked Manhattan. It's a little odd. It's a movie made in 2001. You see the devastation caused by the flood. You see how the Statue of Liberty is a little messed up, but the World Trade Center is intact and fine.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which might seem a little odd now.
They should take it out, damn it.
It's offensive. It's offensive.
Damn it.
What kind of alternate fiction future is this?
I was just looking at the release date. So this came out in June, so yeah, just a few months before.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I noticed it because I really was looking for it, and there it was.
Mm-hmm.
But so at this point, there hasn't actually been very much philosophical stuff going on, as you might expect. There's been a line here and there, but most of it is just the same stuff repeated. Him talking about being real, so mommy will love him. Every once in a while, Jude Law has like an insightful thing to say that shows that he knows a bit beyond his programming, because he says like they'll never love you because you're not real. You're not a boy. You're not a kitty or a doggy or a parakeet or whatever, or a canary. You're not flesh and blood. And he says, and there's a lot of them that hate us, and he's already seen that for himself. And and he does say the one prophetic thing. He says that they made us too fast and they made us too quickly, and they made us too smart, and we're going to replace them, and they hate us for it, which is basically exactly what winds up happening.
Right.
So Jude Law has like his moments where he seems to like break free of like his programming of just like seeking out sex and stuff and all his sex cliches, like when he meets his like first customer and she has bruises on her, he's just like, are those the wounds of passion? Because that's the only thing he can think of. Anything outside that realm doesn't make sense to him. And he's so pleased with his lot in life because he's supposed to be. All he knows is that he makes all sorts of women happy. And, once they go to him, they don't even want a real man anymore because he does it so much better and stuff. But every once in a while, he seems able to look beyond his limited programming and say something insightful, which I guess isn't necessarily uneven writing, but I don't know. It just seems like if they were going to have another companion character for David, they could have done a better job. At the end of the day, like when he and Jude Law finally are separated, you don't really care. At least I didn't. And he said, and he tries to say something philosophical. He says, I was. Like, okay, sure. that didn't hit home for me at all, to tell you the truth. I was just like, oh.
And then David gets to once again just run from the police.
Well, they're not even concerned with him, right? They just leave him.
Well, but I mean, he's in their vehicle. I mean, you would think they would.
Yeah, you would think they would care that he helped hit this fugitive escape and stole their vehicle, but no, they don't. In fact, they leave. They don't even look for the vehicle he stole. He gets to keep it. He keeps the fucking thing. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So they do track down the headquarters, I guess, of Hobby's company. But why would it be in New York? I don't understand. If it's supposed to be like this, nobody's supposed to be there. But anyway, so what he finds in looking for it is another prototype version of himself. Like the pre-imprint version that's creepy and smiley.
Yeah.
And this is where the movie turns again because you're not really expecting it. David, in a rage, kills him. Bashes him apart, and then you're just like, well, earlier in the movie I thought, oh, that's what's wrong with this family? He's just holding scissors to think that he would do anything, because that's what Henry says. He said, if he's been programmed to love, it's reasonable to think he's capable of hate.
Yeah.
It turns out Henry's right, because he sees like another version of himself, can't handle it, screams about how he's unique, and bashes it to death. And then Hobby comes in to meet him, and he's in no way disturbed by this, doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm so glad to meet you.
The absolute
David.
shit out of himself.
Yeah, great.
There could be only one.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because like I don't even like Hobby just seems so odd to me. Like, so it turns out like their big prototype is this massive failure. The family rejected him. He comes here, he sees another version of himself and kills it. And he's also crazy delusional because he's believing in things like that. And again, it's another part earlier in the movie where it's not just because he's a robot either. It's like this weird programming because Joe even says to him, well, suppose the blue fairy isn't real. That's what makes us different from them. They do believe in things that aren't real and they can't see. but we know it's not. And this doesn't even seem to phase David. David's like, oh yeah, Blue Fairy's real. We're gonna find Blue Fairy. Blue Fairy's gonna. he's just really stuck on that point, which I guess makes a certain amount of sense because he just really wants to be real. I guess it proves that this robot with his emotions is capable of having an obsession. Sure, but at the same time, he's not resentful of his mother. He doesn't blame her for anything. He just thinks, okay, she got rid of me, but if I'm real, she'll love me. Okay. Mm-hmm. So then, again, the movie disappoints me again because he's talking to Hobby, and you're waiting for revelations. You're waiting for something. The big revelation you get is, okay, Hobby isn't maybe such a bad guy when earlier in the movie he seemed smiley about playing God. Well, it turns out, David is actually modeled after his own real son who had died.
Right. Shocker.
So, yeah, kind of predictable. And here we go again. Astro Boy, okay? Like, if people don't know Astro Boy or Mighty Atom, I'll give you a quick refresher course. So you have the brilliant Dr. Tenma, who's the head of the Ministry of Science and the most brilliant scientist in the world, and he has a son, Tobio, and Tobio dies in a tragic car accident, and he's devastated by it. Tenma, already living in a world of advanced robots, is so smart that he comes up with a way to make an even more advanced robot, and he models it after his own dead son and gives it the ability to feel and love and all that stuff, and for a while tries to use it as a replacement for his son. But because he's still different from Tobio, and also because being a robot, he can't grow up or change, he rejects him. How does he reject him? He actually sells him to the circus. Now, in the original version, it's not that different, but it's been retconned several times. By the time you get to the fully refined story, this circus, even though the new Tobio, or Atom, Astro, as you want to call him, performs in the robot circus mostly as a clown and stuff, part of the circus later on is that they have a big showing where people get to watch robots get smashed and beat to shit and killed. So that's all there. And then, of course, he gets rescued from the circus by Professor Okana Mizu, the new, and begins his thing. So yeah, it's not exactly an original story from any angle, and they didn't even try, and it's not even nearly as satisfying. I mean, it's an uppity thing to talk about like Atom or Astro being a superior character to David, because that has the advantage of hundreds of years, hundreds of strips, all sorts of time, refined over years. David is a character existing in a single movie, so it's not fair to compare them as far as that goes. So I won't. But just as far as the origin goes, like they pretty much almost take the same origin. They just tweak it slightly. And of course, I mean, the whole point of Astro Boy was it was supposed to be like a futuristic Pinocchio story.
Mm-hmm.
With a little Superman and Mighty Mouse thrown in for good measure. But yeah, so I don't know. I just find it really disappointing when he's talking to Hobby, because Hobby then says like how and there is an earlier scene that I forgot that mentions that, of course, they were monitoring him. So how come they didn't find him right away? How come there were no repercussions for the woman just abandoning her? I hope they should at least got reprimanded or fired or fined or something for taking their valuable thing and just dumping it in the woods.
And just imagine what that would cost. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you know that it's not just like, here, take this. You have to sign waivers and forms, and you're not going to destroy it, and you're not going to turn it loose in the woods.
He's the culmination of 20 months of work in like the most advanced technology that existed at the time. To be like this as close a simulcrim as a human as you can get. And like, I understand her emotional response to a certain point, but then what happens. But anyway, so then what gets weird is they say, we've been watching you, but they did alter one of Dr. No's answers to lead him to here. And they said, that's the only time we intervened. And I'm thinking, why? And why is it so important to not intervene before? Your experiment had already failed completely. We're just like, oh, okay, so he's abandoned to the woods. This will really teach us things. What will that teach you? You're trying to make a robot that loves, and we'll see if it could fit in with a family. Well, it didn't fit in with that family. But, okay, we'll just keep watching it going on the run with a prostitute, because that's interesting, too. That's good for research. I don't know. I just find everything like he and Hobby had to say to each other very unsatisfying. And, and then he says about how, well, he's your real father because he made him. And don't you want to meet, like, your real mothers and fathers? I'll go get them. I'll go get the people that made you. And you think, okay, this might be interesting. David doesn't wait. He gets up. He sees all these other versions and models of himself, which is a pretty cool scene. I like that. Probably can't be too hard for an actor like even Haley Joel Osment to react in that, because it's all this stuff of him. It's, you know, it's for a movie, but it's still pretty weird. Like, you know, you see your face all over this place, and
if it was even there, it was just like lots of tennis balls. Like, just pretend you see lots of your face everywhere.
That's actually a good point, yes. I mean, I do like the bit where he comes up behind the one where it's just the face and doesn't have the stuff in it, and he, like, looks through it himself, so his eyes glow through. I mean, that was kind of cool and stuff.
Yeah.
So then, what's weird is he met, like, a talking version of himself and bashed it to pieces. And now he sees all this, and now he's just sort of bummed out.
Yeah.
And he goes and sits, like, outside on a balcony, and Hobby doesn't look for him or try to find him. And eventually he gets so bummed out that he just commits suicide.
Yeah.
Although I guess he can't really commit suicide. He's not going to drown. We're not sure what he's thinking at this point. Is he trying to commit suicide? Has he gone offline? Does he stop caring? Is everything just overwhelmed him? And he drops into the water. And here we come to another massive coincidence in the movie. I can accept that there's a fair or the Pinocchio exhibit somewhere in Manhattan. But it's right where he lands. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah.
So he lands underwater into a Pinocchio exhibit. Oh, if it's Pinocchio exhibit, there's a good chance there's a blue fairy. Starts to go for it. Jude Law thinks he's rescuing him and rescues him with the police copter thing, which of course can turn into a submarine because it's the future. And then once he's up, he tells them about it. And he's just like, we have to go back down. And then the authorities come to take Jude Law away, but apparently aren't concerned with their own property. Take Jude Law away. Jude Law has this great farewell. And then there's like, okay, bye, robot child that helped him, and bye to our own police cruiser. You can keep it and do what you want with it.
Yeah.
And he does. He dives down, sees the statue or whatever, the blue fairy, and then just decides to concentrate on it really hard and stare at it
For
and
like
wish.
the next 500 million years.
Right. And then we get our one of like my least favorite things in fiction when it's done wrong. I mean, it can be done right. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary. It's the time jump. And this movie does have narration, by the way. It opened with the narration telling us about how the world has changed with climate and stuff, done by Sir Ben Kingsley himself. He comes in again after an hour and a half to tell us, you know, that David's just sat there for 2,000 years looking at the statue and really hoping. And then we get to see, I don't know, some sort of ice age happened. Everything gets frozen over.
Mm-hmm.
And even though David can live for 2,000 years, he must have something in him that makes him shut down for a while, because when he is revived, we get the feeling he has been out for a while. Although, you know, it's not exactly made clear. So he's revived by these super advanced robots that look a lot like the gray aliens, but they're robots. It's not that well explained. I understand why a lot of people had confusion, but they are robots. And the idea is, you know, they're fascinated by him because he's like, they've discovered like the last thing that was actually around when there were living humans, and they want to learn about humans because they were, you know, they were created by robots. They were created by humans or whatever. And they say something like David is like mankind's like last echo or something like that. So they're very interested in him, and from a research point of view, they revive him. And he ignores them all and goes straight to the blue fairy and shatters her because she's covered in ice. I'm surprised she was even intact. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, I'm not going to pick on this movie specifically because this happens in a lot of movies, but if things get frozen over a few thousand years in an ice stage, they don't stay still. Ice doesn't stay still. Ice moves. When you have big, like, things, when you have glaciers and things like that, they might move slowly, because you say slow like a glacier, but they move. So the idea that him and his ship wouldn't have been, like, crushed, like, at some point, but, you know, I'm not going to take a huge issue with it. The movie has bigger problems than that. But so they revive him and sort of tell him what's up and how many years has passed, and it doesn't seem to faze him at all. He's just like, well, blue fairy, make me a real boy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an extended ending, because I think a lot of people thought that was the ending, and then no, wait, there's a lot more to go. And this is where things get a little bit muddy too, because originally what people had said was they thought, okay, well, here's the problem with this movie, of course, is we've got a Kubrick film that was taken on by Spielberg, and they're very different. They're very different guys, very different directors, different sensibilities. Kubrick has all like this dark, serious stuff, whereas Spielberg likes to sentimentalize things and likes to make things emotional and happy and stuff. Obviously, and with his weird alien obsession, obviously Spielberg made up this ending and added it. Spielberg has denied this across the board, says actually all the sentimentality was 100% Kubrick's idea. and that he actually handled the dark things himself, like the Flesh Bear. And he said, people think they know me, they think they know him, but they don't, which I think is fairly true. I think a lot of times people make assumptions about directors and other creators just based entirely on their work, which isn't really fair. Any creator puts a lot of their personality into their work, sure, but it's not their whole thing. Just because you saw, oh, this guy made some dark movies, that's probably all he can ever do. And he's probably a really dark, gloomy person to talk to. Like, people aren't usually that simple. And I'm inclined to believe Spielberg that probably a lot of people made a lot of assumptions about him and Kubrick and where it was. But I don't care. I don't care if it's Kubrick's ending or his ending. I think it's a poorly drawn out ending. It was like the movie just didn't know how to end. And they came up with something to sort of give David a happy ending, even though they painted themselves into a corner with it. And it's a very emotional last ending, but it doesn't feel right to me.
The ending?
Right. Okay, so at this point, they explain who they are, although not that well, because a lot of people don't know necessarily the robots, but they are. They explain how he was like, he's their last like link to the world of humans, because humans have died out at least a few hundred years ago. What Joe said is true. The only things left on Earth now are the robots, and these are some super advanced robots that were invented well after humans were extinct. Obviously, they're fascinated with what came before them. They want to learn all they can. David's a great way to learn this, and they also want to make him happy because, I don't know, because they do. They just say they want him to be happy. Okay, fine. And so they explain to him they can do a lot of things, and they say, well, it's 2,000 years. And they use they make this simulation thing where he gets to talk to like an approximation of the Blue Fairy. She's actually the one doing the explaining. She explains, it's been 2,000 years, so your mother's dead. Everyone's dead. And he's like, well, can't, you're the Blue Fairy, grant my wish. He's like, I can do whatever's possible. That's not possible. But then they make a weird, using his memories, or well, not his memories, but his stored data. They recreate his house for him, give him a nice familiar place to be in. And then once again, Ben Kingsley, now not just doing narration, Ben Kingsley is one of the robots who talks to him and explains that they do have a way of bringing people back if they have like some DNA or something, if they have like the skin sample or something like that. They can bring people back, but it's limited. It only lasts for a day and then they die. And they say, but it doesn't matter because there's nothing left of your mother. We don't know where she was or when she died and stuff. And then
cue the teddy bear.
Yeah. Cue Chekhov's gun there. We've got the lock of hair from earlier that apparently the teddy bear has a pocket.
Yeah.
Apparently the teddy bear has his own pocket, and he kept it, even though we don't know why, because again, apparently the teddy bear is like almost omnipotent. He's the smartest, most aware creature in the movie. And he even knew that in 2,000 years they might need this hair. I don't know, but he's easily, like you said, like it's funny how he often drives the action. Like he's like just a small little thing, but like without him, it would all fall apart. So once again, the teddy bear provides the answer. So to make him happy, they have this little intense conversation, and I mean, it's pretty good acting by Haley Joel Osment. It's not the best lines he's given, but and they're saying, well, we want to make you happy. We explain this. If you want to make me happy, then you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So they make his mom, but we see as the audience that they kind of tweak her a little to make him especially happy because she doesn't have any memory of like anything else. She's not like, where's your brother or where's my husband? Like they tweak her, which I guess is fine. It's fair. If they're going to do it, if they're going to bring her back, they're going to go to the trouble of bringing her back for this guy, for David. They might as well tweak her in a way so it'll work out. And then, they have their one perfect day together, painting things and playing games with Teddy in the house and all this shit. Birthday party. Yeah, they give him an actual birthday party. Gets to blow out the candles and narration going over it. And it all looks very nice. Again, nice use of lighting again. Nice soft lighting coming in, simulated sunset, and all that stuff. Not sunset, simulated sunlight. Sorry. And I mean, it's all very nice. And the best music in the movie is at the end. It's a John Williams score, like a lot of Spielberg. I don't think it's a very memorable score compared to a lot of his others, but in the end, it gets really good, I think. And I really do like the end music a lot.
Yeah, me too. I was going to ask you about that, what you thought about the score, but
the score, yeah, I think it's just it's nothing special at first, but I think the more emotional stuff is good. I think, especially the ending. The ending is really, really good.
Well, on the trivia on IMDb, it says, it never really tells you what happens there at the end. You kind of assume, but John Williams said that, yeah, David did die at the end.
Yeah, I mean, and they say, like, and there's
funny.
not really an explanation for that either. Exactly. And it sounds very poetic because, he's like, for the first, it's established early on in the movie, he can't sleep. He says to them, they're trying to put to bed, he says, I can't sleep, but I can lay quietly. Now they're saying now he does sleep and he went to the place where dreams are born or whatever, which sounds really nice, although again, it's kind of muddy. It's like, how was this achieved? Did the robots also manipulate that too? Did they, like, I don't know, get rid of his power source so he could die at the same time as his mother? So he gets his happy ending, and it is emotional, and I mean, it's well done. I don't necessarily like the context, but what they're showing you is good. I like it. It even makes me think maybe of my own mother a little bit. Sure, I'll admit that. It's a nice emotional moment, love between a mother and son, but it's also very sad and fucked up because it's not really real. It's like the best version of her. It was like he got a few weeks with her where she maybe loved him, but then she didn't. Clearly she didn't, because if you love somebody, you don't do what you did to him, so... David's a very tragic character, and I don't mind movies or stories that have tragic characters, but sometimes I usually have to feel like there was at least some sort of point to it. And this is another thing where I really struggle with this movie. I don't really know. It doesn't seem to succeed to me in the things it's trying to say. If it's trying to talk about AI, people, emotions versus simulated emotion, all this stuff, I mean, none of it is that clear. To me, it's kind of like a mishmash, and it's also, I mean, it's good too when movies don't hit you over the head and tell you what you're supposed to feel, and they leave it up to you to draw conclusions. But at the same time, this just seems really vague. Like, that ending really muddies things for me.
The last ending, I really felt like it would have been so much better without that. Was it at least 20 minutes?
Yeah, it's like 25 minutes. It's long.
Without that, I was expecting it to end, there when...
I think a lot of people, like, watching in theaters thought it was going to end with him, like, I mean, a pretty sad ending, him, like, staring at the blue fairy and, wishing.
I think it works so much better, though. I mean, I don't need a happy ending. I mean, he's a robot.
Right. And, I mean, I get them trying to give us a happy ending, but it's so strange the way it's done that it's not even really happy. It's like a fake happy ending. It's like the robots knew that David was doomed to this, so they just sort of gave him like a weird little approximation to make him happy. But I mean, it's not because he's a robot. I mean, I did learn to care about him, which I guess...
Sure.
Which, I mean, is, I guess, the simplest point the movie makes. And I mean, sure, of course, why not? Haley Joel Osment.
It's just, I don't know, man. Spielberg being Spielberg, I guess. You just have to... to wrap it up into a nice little package, and
Well, but that's exactly what Spielberg denies. Spielberg says that ending is Kubrick. But,
okay.
But I don't know, right?
Wow.
But that is what he has denied across the board, that he like tacked on some ending of his own, and he says that almost all like the more sentimental stuff actually came from Kubrick because that was the kind of story Kubrick wanted to tell. I don't know.
I feel like a lot of this movie was cut out because so many of the stories don't go anywhere. The additional, like the entire end sequence, I feel like we missed something there that may have made a little bit more sense why they even included that in the film. And, the whole murder mystery with the gigolo, I mean, what was the purpose of even including that?
I mean, the only purpose was to explain while he was on the run.
Right.
And to get rid of him at the end.
Yeah, to get rid of him.
Right? It's like, okay, here's his reason to like leave Rouge City, and now here's his reason to leave David because we don't need him anymore because he's become extraneous.
I mean, the way they set it up, though, you almost feel like it's going to be like a detective type story or some resolution there. I mean, but it's nothing.
They gave you a resolution. He got caught and put to death for a crime he didn't commit. And you're like, but they're right in that I don't care. Like, I didn't care.
Yeah.
Joe had his moments where I think he said some insightful things, but they almost seemed out of place. They almost seemed like they went beyond his programming, and that it was just like they wanted to get like these thoughts expressed, but they had like the worst possible character to do it. But yeah, there's just a
Yeah,
lot of
that's true.
contrived conveniences things going on in here, especially the whole fair with the Pinocchio exhibit just being near where David jumps off the balcony. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, awfully convenient. Too convenient. But I don't know, man. It's just a talking to you about it. I'm liking it less and less.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm not trying to diminish other people's enjoyment of the film because there's good things. But yeah, I mean, as I said, when we were considering doing this movie, I hadn't seen it in several years. And I thought, well, considering what I've heard about it, and other people turning around on it, I thought maybe there's a good chance that I'll turn around on this and I'll see it
mhm,
differently.
mhm.
But I don't know. I'm older and things have happened, but I don't really see it any differently. I just feel like it falls on its face with a lot of the points it's trying to make. And I think either, like you said, things were cut out, or there's just some kind of mediocre writing going on, leading to some of these, plot developments. It's like, and it's just not very satisfying.
It's not, but the what I can take away from it is I think the special effects look really really cool. The robots, all the whole flesh. Was it the flesh spectacle?
Flesh fair.
Flesh fair.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start saying flesh more now that I know you hate the word so much.
makes my flesh crawl. But yeah,
But I mean, I really enjoyed that, and I would have liked to have seen more of that environment. Um, I don't know. It just, yeah.
yeah. I mean, its presentation. It's a Spielberg movie, so presentation is very good.
Hmm.
Good effects. I really like when they come into the flooded Manhattan. Looks really good.
Hmm.
It looks better than some movies that were made years later. To tell you the truth,
It looks better than movies made today.
I mean, it looks a lot better than like what they did with like The Day After Tomorrow,
Yeah.
which was like 2004, which did the and stuff like that. But yeah, lots of stuff looked good. As I said, John Williams' score was okay, and then got better as things got more emotional, which I guess is good.
Hmm.
Sometimes you don't need. I mean, it's not the type of movie that would have like a big memorable theme like Superman or Indiana Jones or Star Wars.
Right.
So I understand that, but I really do like that end song. I'll probably have to get that now that it's in my head a lot. I like that piano part, and then the orchestra coming in and stuff really work for me and helps make an ending that seems kind of weird and unnecessary still kind of work for me. Still, at least I still get some of the emotion out of it, and I have to give a lot of that to the music.
Hmm. Yeah. Definitely, the score was there for me. One of my, one of the parts of the film that I enjoyed more than others.
But still, overall presentation, I still have problems with it stylistically. Like I said, it seems uneven. They present us a world, and I mean, I understand they are trying to go for a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for, to create some distance, to make a bit of a detachment between the suburban life he's living, then being out in the wilderness in the flesh fair, then a place like Rouge City. I understand that there should be a visual disconnect there, but I don't know, it probably could have been handled better, I think. And some of that stuff just goes a little over the top. Like I said, like the Tron motorcycles, it's almost like they're like, it's the future, so here you go. Like,
Craziness. It's
yeah,
craziness. Look,
here comes the moon balloon.
their their motorcycles have wolf heads on the front, and they actually move.
So they have that later bit after they've escaped where he and Teddy are looking at the real moon, and he's just like, is it coming for us? And Teddy's like, I can't tell yet. Like, it just seems so stupid.
Oh, yeah. Let's see.
But yeah, so this was a movie, as you said, that underperformed at the box office in North America and really divided critics. But
Mm-hmm.
Roger Ebert, full 4 stars, audacious, technically masterful, challenging, sometimes moving, and ceaselessly watchable. I have a lot of trouble with that ceaselessly watchable part. I can tell you that. There's parts of the movie where I'd be perfectly content to look away and think about something else. To tell you the truth, it's I think that's the other thing. It has parts I find boring, which I don't say about too many
Yeah,
Spielberg movies. There's
I
parts
agree.
that I feel either don't further the plot or they don't further the plot in a satisfying way, and they're just kind of boring. Like you said, they set us up for certain things with Jude Law's character that it's never explained, but when it's over, you're just like, oh, it's just a device so that he could meet him. And
Mhm.
I don't know.
Did you notice one of the there was a cameo by Adrian Grenier. I don't know if that's how you say his name. The guy from Entourage. He was one of the kids in the they gave them a ride.
Oh no, I don't know. I don't know what he looks like. I saw the name of the credits, and the name meant something. I was like, "That's somebody." But
I
I
recognized him. It was the main guy. He pulled out his little projector and projected a little dancing lady onto his jeans.
That's a little confusing too, just the way they did that. Because he wants to get them to Rouge City, so he says, we can't walk there. We'll need a ride. And what they do purposely is they show Gigolo Joe talking before they show who he's talking to. And at first, it just sounds like he's just seducing some women, because that's what he does, right? He's talking about wonders, but then he shows that, and it's like, oh, actually, he's showing like these young, horny guys, like, oh, how cool will it be to go to, Rouge City, where you can fuck a bunch of robots or whatever. I thought that was odd too. I found that really misleading, because at first I thought, oh, okay, he's using his charms on some woman. It turns out, no, he's just appealing to the baser instincts of some horny 20-somethings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he shows them like a little dancing hologram, and they're like, "Oh, deal, yeah, we'll drive you, man." Like,
oh, titties.
Exactly. Like, I was on the way we were on the way to see my mom at the hospital, but this is more important.
This is much more important. No, that guy I always recognize. I mean, I've watched some episodes of Entourage. I'm not proud of, but I don't particularly like the show. I just thought that was interesting. And Meryl Streep is one of the voices.
Yeah, I knew that. She's the voice of the Blue Fairy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Is that right?
Yeah, she's the Blue Fairy. Robin Williams is Dr. No. And very briefly, Black Comedian Bot is Chris Rock.
I wonder how he's credited. If that was it, that would be hilarious.
I hope it's Black Comedian Bot. Because, I mean, it's funny. You would think that, like, something that advanced wouldn't be like that, like, so racially insensitive looking. It almost looked like it was like Blackface Bot. Yeah. It's like, oh, the 20s are hip again. Let's make a robot about that.
The 20s are hip again. Racism is running amok.
Yeah. But I just have so many problems with, like, the way the plot is constructed and stuff, and just so they can go from point A to point B to point C, all these things that I just take issue with. Mm-hmm. The earliest being placing him with that family in the first place. So the father takes him home basically to distract Monica from her own grief. And yet, after she does start to warm up to a little bit, Henry himself shows all sorts of signs of distrust and hostility for it. It's like he never bought into the son thing at any point. She did, at least for a little while. She imprints with him. That's why he kept calling him Henry and not Dad or anything. It's just like, and then it just gets even so much worse when the real son, Martin, comes home. And, I'm thinking, what kind of parents are these? They don't take Martin aside, explain anything to him. There's no repercussions. It's just like, okay, Martin, yeah, here's your toy brother. Do whatever the fuck you want with him. Mess with his head. Yeah, just leave us alone. Mess with his head. Get in all the emotional assaults you can. Like I said, it's like a stroke of genius for that kid to like bring up Pinocchio. He's like, and then he looks so evil in that shot. He's just like, David's gonna love it. Like,
yeah.
What kind of mother are you that you can't see right through that? That you've got like a little budding sociopath there that wants to see like the emotional breakdown of his rival.
Yeah, he is a demented little kid, little Norman Bates.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, and that wasn't needed. You could have just had a normal kid, doing some normal reactions. Because sibling rivalry. Also, you're not real, But it's just so much more cruel and calculated. It's disturbing.
Well, I mean, maybe it was so you feel more for David, that he's being, abused.
Sure, absolutely, but when they go that far, again, I feel like I'm being insulted. I feel like it's like emotional manipulation.
Totally.
I
felt that way the entire movie.
Exactly. Like, the better way to make you emotionally connect with characters is good characters and good writing, not a bunch of, like, hack tricks.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate saying that about a Spielberg film, particularly one that was based on a good short story and that had involvement from somebody like Kubrick. But at the end of the day, I just find like it's a story full of, just problems. And some of it's just laziness, and some of it's direct manipulation, and that's why I have a lot of trouble enjoying it beyond some of the visuals and some of the music and stuff like that, because I just feel like they don't have much respect for the audience, and they're like, okay, feel this way now,
Mm-hmm.
this etc. And then the ending is what really puts it over the top for a lot of people. I already didn't like it before the ending, but the ending doesn't help. Again,
Yeah. I know I say this a lot, but if they could have maybe trimmed it down to maybe a tight 90 minutes, it
well,
made
I
it more
absolutely agree with you.
enjoyable.
I mean, I've got no argument with you here. This one, it just feels like they almost felt compelled to make it longer just because people expect that kind of scale from a Spielberg project. It's like this big movie, AI, emotional, If it's a 90 minutes, most people, they think maybe people will feel gypped. I don't know, but it could have tightened it up. But
Well, I feel like there's so much we're missing. I know I mentioned that before, but what they chose to leave in and what they cut out, I would just love to know the original runtime. It had to have been like 6 hours long.
But I mean, listen to this fucking thing from some critic that I guess this is one of the critics that thought like the movie was far too smart for the North American audience, is why I didn't go. This is there. Wait. Each part of David's journey through carnal and sexual universes into the final eschatological devastation becomes as profoundly philosophical and contemplative as anything by cinema's most thoughtful speculative artists, Borzage, Ozu, Demi, Tarkovsky. I mean, come on, that's like the most pretentious piece of shit I've ever read. Are you serious?
I totally disagree with that. Yeah.
Really? It's right up there with Tarkovsky and Ozu? Give me a break, man. But yeah, I'm just looking at a lot of quotes and stuff like that where people, there are certain people that have like really turned, like these weren't from at the time. These are like a few years later. It's like, oh, it's sort of become a cool thing to like have a new appreciation for it. And that was something that I thought maybe I might get caught up in. And then I watched the movie. I was like, nope. I feel the same way about it as I did before.
Yeah, I'm reading some reviews from 2001. Seems mostly favorable.
Yeah. No, in 2001, it was just sort of divided. Leonard Maltin didn't like it, for instance.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did Leonard say? Do you have it in front of you? I'm just curious.
I have, well, just a little bit. Something. Let me see. Intriguing story draws us in, thanks in part to Osment's exceptional performance. Takes several long turns, ultimately doesn't work. Spielberg rewrote the adaptation Stanley Kubrick commissioned of the short story. The result is a curious and uncomfortable hybrid of Kubrick and Spielberg sensibilities, which I totally agree with. Because honestly, I think it's kind of it. It's like a mishmash of the worst of Spielberg and the worst of. It's like it's not the good elements from either of them. Even though, again, one of the worst things about Spielberg is his tendency to sentimentalize things, and yet again, Spielberg has vehemently denied that the sentimentality came from him, that it was all Kubrick. So
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing. I mean, I can believe it as like a half truth, but I don't think it's the full truth. Sure.
I do think that Haley Joel Osment did a great job. I think he.
Yeah, that is one thing I have changed about. Really, like I said, I was pretty dismissive of him years ago, but I've come to be okay with him now, and it is a pretty hard role to do when you're playing somebody that has emotions, but not necessarily normal emotions. So it's a much different thing when the director's telling you how to emote or react in a scene, because it's not like the way most boys would do it necessarily.
Right.
I mean, it's such an uneven character, but you get why that is. So I don't have any problems with the character being uneven, because that's kind of the point, in that we see how loving and kind he is, but then we also see him go into homicidal rage at one point, and it's interesting.
Yeah, that guy really, man, people really hated that guy after Sixth Sense, and I guess this as well. People really hated that guy. I remember he was he got a DUI or wrecked his car when he was drinking or something one time, and everybody was like, "Fuck that guy!" I'm like, "Oh, come on, man!" That's child stars having it rough.
Yeah.
But,
and like a lot of them, he has grown into a kind of an awkward adult. I saw this movie on Netflix a few months ago called Sex Ed that stars him, where he's like the substitute teacher that wants to like some school doesn't have a sex ed program, so he thinks he should do it, but the big twist is, oh, he's a virgin. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's like part of society, and like
it's
a dumb little movie and stuff. But I mean, one thing it really gets across is like, you haven't seen Haley Joel Osment in a while. Here he is as like an adult, and he's kind of weird.
He is kind of weird. He was in Tusk. I don't know if you saw that.
I still haven't.
Kevin Smith.
People like it.
I would say watch it just for the sheer absurdity. But
yeah, I'll watch it.
And you get to see Johnny Depp in probably one of his worst roles ever.
Wow.
Which that fucking clown's doing another Pirates movie. I don't know if you heard that.
No, I didn't.
Yep. Another Pirates of the Caribbean.
I mean, I'm okay with that, I guess. I don't really have any problem with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. The third one's the only one I don't like. The third one's kind of a mess, but the others are fine.
I mean, I don't have a problem with them necessarily. I'm just, they're not my cup of tea, so I'm not going to.
I like the first two a lot.
I'm not going to watch them.
I enjoy the first two.
I've tried. I just can't get into them for some reason.
Yeah. They're okay, but I mean, they're like amongst the most profitable films ever made ever. Yeah. So you get why they make more.
Sure.
And plus, it's like Johnny Depp's like favorite thing to do.
I mean, you can't make that movie without him.
Yeah. Although it is true, like when they made the fourth one, I actually thought, okay, this is a good idea. You know, it's just going to focus on him. Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley have moved on, and they're not going to be in it. And I thought that would help the movie, but it didn't really. You know. I almost kind of missed their characters, to tell you the truth, and I didn't. Really? And I didn't think I would, because especially after the mess that was the third one. The third one is just this colossal mess where they're just doing way too many things at once and all this stuff. I don't know, but
I think Johnny Depp's had 2 divorces since the last movie, so he probably needs to jumpstart his.
Wasn't his divorce with Amber Heard like really vicious too? Like, didn't they say a bunch of terrible shit about each other? I think.
I know she said that he was really abusive, like physically abusive.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. But.
Yeah, I have no idea what to believe when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, Johnny Depp. He was so awesome in the 90s, but by like the mid-2000s, no good anymore.
Yeah, man, what's the last good thing he's done? Like, even that Hunter Thompson movie he made a few years ago wasn't that great.
No.
I forgot the name of it, but
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because he had like a couple like big high-profile movies. I didn't see it, but they did very poorly. Like the one he did with Angelina Jolie, The Tourist. Like,
oh
that
man,
did very poorly.
People say that is awful.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like up there with the worst movies ever type. You know.
Holy shit! Yeah, I just knew it was bad. You know, I remember a couple of years ago it was a big deal. He was doing that movie. What was it, Transcendent or whatever, you know, about the guy that can use his brain or something like that. It's had a lot of marketing behind it. Oh, Johnny Depp in this like cool sci-fi role. As far as I know, that bombed.
Yeah, I own it on Vudu, but I haven't watched it. I saw. Let's see. Did you see Dark Shadows?
I didn't hate it, but it was a movie that had a lot of potential to be a lot cooler than it was.
That's one I still need to watch. The Rum Diary.
It has a couple. Yeah, The Rum Diary is just sort of boring. It never should have been a movie. Like it just works more written. It doesn't really work. So I don't really pin that on him exactly. But yeah. But the other one. What was the other one? How did I lose it so quickly? What's wrong with my brain?
Transcendence.
No, Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows has some jokes that land, but they're just few and far in between. Mm-hmm. And like most of it's just like, I don't care. But it has some moments where you're like, oh, that's decently funny. But considering like what it was based on and everything, it could have been a lot funnier. It's basically like it had potential to be really funny, and it was just sort of, you know. But
I'm curious. I do like Tim Burton quite a bit.
I haven't liked Tim Burton since Big Fish. I've completely turned on Tim Burton. I used to like him. Okay, now all I know him for is destroying classics.
He ruined my childhood.
See, I don't say that. But I'm certainly very unhappy with what he's done with Alice in Wonderland. And I'm certainly very unhappy with what he did with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Mm-hmm. You know,
I don't disagree with you at all.
You know, they make me mad. He does a lot with Batman I take issue with, but I still think is okay. You know, and I respect the fact that those movies helped Batman a lot in popularity. Like if the '89 Batman wasn't as good as it was or popular, you wouldn't have the animated series and stuff. So I mean, I still really like those two Burton Batman films. I have a lot of comic booky issues with them and stuff, and I let a lot of it go because it is what it is. It's Tim Burton's Batman. That's fine. Yeah. But yeah, after that, yeah, I think he could still maybe be good if he ever tried to do anything original anymore. But now it's just always some adaptation of something else, and it's like in his own stupid style that doesn't work for absolutely everything. I hate to tell you that, Mr. Burton, but it doesn't work for absolutely everything.
Well, I liked his newest movie, the oh shit, I'm looking at Johnny Depp here, the Miss Peregrine's Home for Particular Children, whatever the name of it is.
Well, I haven't seen that, so I guess I'm willing to give it a chance.
I did enjoy it. I mean, nothing I'm going to probably revisit. If my kids didn't want to watch it every 5 minutes, I wouldn't revisit it at all. But they'd love it. Yes.
They like it.
But it's practical effects, and like these kids are all doing their own stunts, which I had no idea about until I saw the special features, which I really respect. It's got like 8-year-old kids like doing some pretty serious stunts, and it's not it's not CG, and I can appreciate that. But yeah, we've gone pretty far off topic here.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at some of the stuff about, again, just reaction and stuff to the movie. But yeah, it was just pretty divisive, and it's only sort of gotten a little worse as time's gone on, especially with certain people reversing their original position. There were a lot of people that at the time were negative on it and have turned around and said they actually like it a lot now, and that didn't happen for me. I try to look at it with fresh eyes and stuff like that. But all I see are kind of the same problems, and some of them, like I said, some of them I'm a little even more well informed about now than I was at the time. And I'm just like, I don't know, just go read like an Astro Boy comic or something. But yeah, because I mean, it's a part of fiction that I like a lot, and I just think I've seen it done better in a lot of places. Because I do like all that stuff about that question and that situation, the morality, AI, and how people are going to react to it, and all this. I find that all very interesting, and I think there's been a lot of good fiction about it. And this one was poised to be kind of an important one, big Spielberg movie about it, Kubrick, and to me, it pretty much falls flat. Because at the end, like I said, it's pretty obvious what its themes are, but by the end of the movie, you don't feel like any of them have really been done that well or expanded upon or given you really any answers. I mean, I don't demand clear-cut answers for every movie I watch, but when a movie is that specific about making certain points, it kind of does set itself up for it. So it's just sort of, I don't know, a letdown to me that they just have all like these things that they raise and then they just sort of let them go, and then you just get that ending, which is like a happy ending for the sake of a happy ending, but in a really weird, melancholy way, and really drawn out, and a weird disconnect from the rest of the plot in a way. So much so that a lot of people thought that there were aliens, and
Yeah, well, I mean, I can totally see why people thought that.
Yeah, I mean, there's even that first shot of David. When David first appears in the doorway as a silhouette, like the light is to make his head all small. It's like it's a direct like foreshadowing of those alien forms,
Yeah.
And that doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just that Spielberg likes that visual. So foreshadowing and stuff isn't always something I can just applaud, because it doesn't seem to serve any purpose except that he likes how that looks.
Sure.
Unless he's trying to say, look how alien David is, but that's the exact opposite of the point. It's supposed to be like David, he's their first crack at like doing like a robot that's different, that's like a real boy. I don't know. In the end, it still hits me a bit emotionally, but I chalk most of that up to the music.
Yeah. It's So what do you think? He dies? He dies at the end? He powers down, however you want to say.
Yeah, I figure that dream of that entering that realm of dreams or whatever. Plus, again, if you can't give him that, then it's even worse, because that just means he wakes up in the bed with his dead mom, and then gets to live out a horrible life with these other robots, where all he wants is human contact, and because that's what he's programmed for. And all humans have been dead for centuries. So it's even more of a downer if you consider that. So it's I figure he powers down, and maybe it's I don't know what they're trying to say. Are they trying to say he finally enters that realm because like he's reached his objective? Like that doesn't even make any sense. Does that mean like if Monica had just loved him like she was supposed to, he would have just like died eventually? I don't know.
I don't think they know.
Yeah, and I don't think they know either.
I think we've put more thought into it than the scriptwriters.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it just seems so tacked on. You know, Monica at the end, she tells him that she's always loved him. You know, I love you. I've always loved you, and he gets what he wants out of it. And it's nice to see. But as the audience, if you've been paying attention, it's like, well, it's not really her. It's just a weird approximation of her. And if it was really her, it would be a lot more problematic because she, you know, has all these memories of living the rest of her life without him and having a son and all this other stuff and possibly grandchildren and all this stuff. And yet, I mean, I get why the robots did it. They get this version of her that like just is focused on him and just wants to love him. And that's all very nice. But yeah,
well, he's just doing what he's programmed to do.
Mm-hmm.
He imprinted on her. He's programmed to love her. So, I mean,
that's the other thing. Like if you would think in this kind of movie, they're almost trying. The point they'd be trying to make is like he transcends that or something, but they never really give us that feeling, right?
Mm-mm.
It's more like, yeah, he tried to like fulfill his programming. It didn't work out, and they kicked him out. He had sort of some weird adventures. He lived for 2,000 years. Aliens then gave him what he wanted, and he died. Like I don't know.
That sounds so stupid saying it like that.
Not aliens, but okay, super advanced robots give him what he wanted. Yeah, that's what I mean. And just, I don't know, the way they move the plot along, to me, they just use a lot of lackluster and sometimes lazy devices and things. There's all these times where I'm just like, why would you do this? Why would this happen? Why? You know, that's not the mark of a well-told story. If like, because I mean, there's plenty of stories that don't have to answer every question because if it's done in a satisfying enough way, you don't even think about it.
Right.
And yet this movie is just alarm bells in my head like all the freaking time. Like, why would this happen? Okay. Why would they react this way? Why would this lead to that? You know, all this stuff. And as you said, certain things that just aren't followed up on or explained. It's like, whatever happened with this? Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, any sort of a resolution, I mean, the corner they painted themselves into, like you said, with a Gigolo Joe. I guess it's best we see him go the way we do. I mean, yeah, they're like, okay, we'll give you closure. We'll show him getting melted down. Like, okay, fine, but they tried to make his like leaving seem somewhat significant or emotional, and it doesn't work for me at all. He's just like, goodbye, David. I was. Yeah, that's great. Good job, sex guy.
Yeah, go fuck somebody.
Go please those lonely ladies.
He's up there giving cunnilingus in the sky. I'll tell you what.
The tongue that never quits. Ladies, we're still probably some decades away from that, but you know, we do what we can.
Yeah. You're stuck with us until.
Yeah. Playing the saxophone taught me to stagger breathe. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I played the trumpet, so.
Yeah. So. Yeah, my final thoughts on the movie is just like I said. I thought maybe seeing it again after all these years and the things that I read and knowing that there were a lot of people that at one point didn't like it and then came to appreciate it. I thought perhaps in revisiting it, I might change, and I haven't. It doesn't make me disappointed we did. It's still a very interesting movie to talk about and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's also good, you know, that we're not always talking about movies, just saying, oh, this is great, that is great, everything's great, you know. So it gives us, you know, that sort of angle too, so that we're not always just praising this movie or that movie and saying how good it is. There's things to praise in this movie, as we said. There's some. It's a Spielberg movie. It's going to look good. It's going to sound good. It has really great effects for the time that hold up pretty well. The actors aren't bad. Some of it is just, you know, they aren't given great dialogue or writing to work with. Haley Joel Osment is pretty good in a pretty hard role. You know, it's always harder for kids and stuff like that. And so he's not a criticism that I have. He's fine. With the parents, I guess it's fine acting, but they just work out to be really unlikable characters because of the way things go. But
yeah. Well, Haley Joel Osment is on screen for like 99% of the movie too. So I mean, he's basically,
oh yeah, he carries the whole thing.
It all hinges on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's very good. He's probably the right kid at the right time for that. I don't have an issue with that like I used to. But
sorry, I found myself Googling pictures of Chris Rock robot, and I seem to have fallen into a odd sequence of images. Yeah, I'm glad I watched it. Probably something I'll never revisit, but at least now I can, have an idea of what this film's about, because what I thought I had seen was not the same movie. So I had seen something else entirely.
I mean, sometimes when you have something that's like written badly, you understand it because they go through, especially when you have a movie like this that had gone through development hell for so long and different people wrote different things, that always, but what it comes down to is at the end, the actual script was written by Spielberg himself, which is his first, which I read was his first solo script credit since Close Encounters, which means like writing was something he more or less put away. And now he picked it up again, and I don't know. I don't think he did such a great job. Now, again, it was based on stuff written by other people too, but I don't really know where the gaps are, or, when the ball was dropped and who picked it up and stuff. Those things are hard to trace back and stuff, so I don't know exactly who to leave the shoddy writing at the feet of, but at the end of the day, it's Spielberg's name on the script.
Yeah, I'd like to hear him talk about it, really. He probably won't ever do that, but...
Yeah. All the quotes I find like on Wikipedia and stuff of him is just basically him deflecting and saying like how people blame him for the sentimentality or the ending, and him saying that it was all Kubrick, that people got that completely mixed up and confused, and that the sentimental stuff and that the lighter stuff or the emotional stuff all came from Kubrick. The ending was all Kubrick. Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know either, man.
But yeah. You want to call it a night?
Yeah, I guess before we devolve into anything worse. But it's an interesting movie. We do full spoilers. We try to give people the heads up so they can watch the movie beforehand. We're obviously always interested in what you guys think of these movies too, not just hearing us drone on about them. But as a movie that came out in 2001, I think there were a lot of people that saw it back then, and maybe it's been years since they've seen it. Maybe they'd want to revisit it too or something, or they missed it, or they're curious about it, because it's a movie you hear about being a Spielberg movie. It's a movie you hear about because it didn't perform so well, at least over here. It's a movie I hear about now because it seems to be like one of the few movies I've heard about like critics and people reversing their position on and stuff, which doesn't necessarily happen a lot. And I don't know, like when we talked about the other one, Empire of the Sun, I like pointing out movies to people that didn't necessarily do too well at the time, that I think maybe were overlooked or misunderstood at their time and get vindicated by history or deserve another look. And I was hoping maybe AI might fall into that category, and it does for some people. It's not for me. It's mostly a miss. It seems to bring up all these themes and stuff that it wants to get across, and I feel like it falls short on pretty much all of them. And at the end of the day, I just find it kind of a frustrating movie in a lot of ways. I dislike it kind of strongly just because it deals with subject matter I like a lot. But at the same time, it doesn't ruin anything. There's lots of good stuff out there that tackles the same stuff that I would recommend to other people too. But I mean, if you like it, that's cool. And actually seeing it has just made me want to go like reread some of those short stories again. Not even necessarily, I mean, that one too, because it was so many years, but just like some of the stuff by Isaac Asimov and stuff like that, the stuff that laid the foundation for stories like this, because a lot of it is really good, especially when you consider when it was written, some of the stuff written in like as early as like the early 50s and stuff. And so I'll be embarking on some of that as I go forward, I think, is maybe reading some Asimov and stuff. Next thing I know, I'll be reading Foundation again, which is not a good idea. Foundation is not related to that, by the way. It's just a really big series that he did. It's like the only thing that's like so political that's ever interested me. Like the entire first book, Foundation, like all that really happens is just a bunch of like political manipulation and stuff, and that does not sound interesting to hear it, but like to read it, it actually kind of is. But yeah, I'll be reading about robots. Next thing I'll know, I'll be like reading Foundation's End and like the 5 other Foundation sequels. But yeah, I like Asimov. What can I say? Very big figure in sci-fi, particularly when it comes to robots and AI and stuff like that. The movie I, Robot is so loosely based on his work. It might use the title, but it's so far from it. It's an okay movie, I guess, though. Will Smith doing his thing.
Hopefully we can avoid that one.
Will Smith, the detective who hates robots.
That's not too far of a stretch from what he normally plays.
2035.
That's like not far away at all.
That's when that movie's supposed to be set?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it suffers from the same thing other movies do, like being a little short-sighted.
Yeah.
People even in the 80s think of 2010 as so far off. Back to the Future Part 2 and stuff like that, and Transformers stuff happens all the time. But yeah, that's what I would do if I was ever writing that sort of fiction now. I'd be smart enough, I think, to probably make it at least 100 years. At least 100 years. Depending on what I'm doing. But even if I think it's not a huge thing, because I don't know, we've seen how technology moves now. There's not really any way to predict it. It's kind of hilarious when you think about it, that if you went back to 1985 and be okay, well, I'm from 2017, and really the big thing is phones. Everybody has a fucking phone. You do everything on your phone. They'd be what? Why are we concentrating on phones?
Right.
I thought flying cars and things. And we're no, it's phones, man. You play games on it.
We have regular ass cars. Our cars are the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Oh yeah, fossil fuels.
Don't worry, we're even more dependent on them than before.
Exactly.
Even more, man. The future. Future looks bright. Yeah, that's a good place to end then. Okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was Steven Spielberg / maybe depending on how you want to view it, Stanley Kubrick's AI. Probably, I get the feeling Kubrick. Again, people close to him said, "Oh, I think Kubrick would have liked it." I guess it's impossible to speculate on that, but I don't know. It seems awfully different from any other Kubrick films, but whatever. But yeah, that was AI 2001. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. And next week, I think we're going to do some more sci-fi. We got it down to a few things. So we're thinking maybe the movie with David Bowie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, which is not about robots, but aliens. He's an alien. So 90% sure that's what we're going to go with. Yeah. And we'll probably cement that soon in Twitter and stuff like that. So I look forward to that as we continue with some sci-fi, but something pretty different, I think.
Absolutely.
So thanks a lot, guys, and we will see you next time on The Pocket Dimension. Have a good one.
Thanks for watching.